Good morning, friends. Welcome to the second static lecture on History for Prelims 2018. In this lecture, we'll be discussing two topics. Firstly, we'll be discussing 1857 revolt, and secondly, we'll be discussing social reformers in India. So both these topics are important for your exam because UPSC has been asking questions on these topics. Social reformers in India, every year they ask one or two questions in that. So we try to cover almost all the major social reformers in India, because if you read NCERT, there are very few reformers and there is very few information which is given there. That is why I did a lot of Googling. I tried to compile different books and then and that I will teach in the class. So, first we will start with 1857 revolt. So 1857 revolt was called as the first war of independence by V.D. Savarkar, while it was called as neither first nor national nor war of independence by R.C. Majumdar. So there are two extreme views. The British calls it a normal sepoy mutiny, while the Indian nationalists call it as the first war of independence. The reality, however, lies in between. So it was neither just a sepoy mutiny, because there were other people who were also engaged in this war. There were peasants, there were landlords, there were kings, there were other sections of the people who participated in the war. However, it could not be called as a war of independence, or because there was no nationalism in modern sense in that era. Everybody was fighting for themselves, right? Nobody was fighting for independence of India. They wanted liberation of their own kingdom. So that is why it could not be called as in first war of independence also. So first of all, let us examine the causes of 1857 revolt. So the causes could be segregated into political cause, economic cause, administrative cause, social or religious cause, and immediate cause. So let us first examine or explore the political causes of the revolt. So there were 3 or 4 main political causes because of which there was a revolt. Firstly, there was this concept of doctrine of lapse. So this doctrine of lapse meant that any ruler who does not have a biological son, his kingdom would be annexed by the British Empire. So any kingdom which does not have a natural heir his kingdom would automatically be annexed by the British. And that went against the Hindu law of succession, because in Hindu law of succession, even the adopted child could succeed the king. So but Lord Dalhousie did not allow that thing, and because of doctrine of lapse, number of kingdoms like Satara, Jaipur, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Jhansi and Nagpur were annexed by the British rule. And when they were annexed, naturally the rulers did not felt happy. And since they did not feel happy, they kind of rose against the British rule. So we have Rani Lakshmi Bai, we have Nana Sahib, we have people like them who are revolting because their kingdom was annexed on the pretext of doctrine of lapse. Second thing is conquest. The British were following the policy of conquesting all the native states, and on any pretext or some other pretext it was annexed. Even the Punjab, which tried to remain loyal to the British, was also annexed after Ranjit Singh died. That naturally somehow, hurted the sentiments of native rulers, and they tried to support the cause of 1857 revolt. Thirdly, humiliation of Mughals. So, in 1856, the Viceroy announced that after Bahadur Shah Jafar would die, the Mughal nobility would not leave or would not live in Red Fort, and the heirs to Bahadur Shah Jafar would not be called as Emperor of India, because still Bahadur Shah Jafar, symbolically he was the Emperor of India. So after he will die, his son will not be considered as an Emperor of India, and they would have to leave the Red Fort. So at that time, Mughal ruled over India for 250 years, and both Hindus and Muslims have some sentimental attachment with the Mughals. And this mistreatment of Mughal emperor was somehow hurted the feelings of many Muslims and many Hindus, because they felt that the British are trying to humiliate the emperor of India, and that somehow kind of antagonized their feeling or hatred towards the British rule. Next is suspension of pension. So suspension of pension, pension was suspended of Nana Sahib, Rani Lakshmi Bai. That also motivated them to join the ranks. So these are the main political causes of the 1857 revolt. Next we have is administrative cause. So firstly, the British introduced rule of law in India. A.V. Dicey's concept of rule of law was introduced in India, and that somehow codified the law that gave opportunity to the rise of a new class called as lawyers, and it made the justice not just costly but time consuming for Indians. Or also it made it very tough for them to understand. Most of the Indians at that time were uneducated, right? Earlier law was very simple for them. They used to go to the panchayat or the governor or the king, and their justice there used to be done within the matter of few minutes. But with this new system of courts and laws and lawyers, it made very difficult for the people. It made the life of people more miserable, because they could not understand this new complicated law, and that made them more vulnerable to exploitation, right? So this is also one of the reasons why we had this revolt. Secondly, or second cause was unpopular British administration. So British administration, as you know, was completely, the motive was to appropriate the wealth of India. There was hardly any welfare motive which they had. They used to treat Indians with contempt. They hardly used to listen to Indians, and that naturally antagonized the Indians. Thirdly, exclusion of Indians from administrative posts. So Indians were not, 1836 thing allowed that Indians, no distribution would be made on caste, sex and religion or color, but no Indian was selected for civil services till 1857 revolt. There was hardly any, in army also, there was hardly any promotion, an Indian could never reach the rank of officer. So all this also naturally antagonized the Indians. Third is economic causes. So, firstly, there was this ruin of Indian manufacturers. So we understood, or we learned in the last lecture, how the free capital or how the free trade syndrome completely ruined the Indian handicraft industry and led to the process of deindustrialization. So all these artisans who were unemployed or who were disguisedly employed in agriculture, they were also very anti-British, and naturally that led them to join or revolt against the British. Secondly, there was pressure on land. So this also we understood or we read or we dealt last week or in the last lecture, where we discussed how in permanent settlement there were chains of intermediaries and everybody wanted to exploit the peasant as maximum as it wants. I mean, the actual rate was 70 to 90%, and therefore the peasants, they were they were feeling very much exploited, and therefore they also somehow understood the true cause of their misery is not the landlord but the British system, which has made it possible for landlord to exploit them. So naturally they also joined the movement. Thirdly, so when permanent settlement was introduced, it was introduced with the hope that it would create a political alliance in Jamidars, because their existence is dependent on the sustenance of the British rule. But as we discussed in the last lecture, that there was sunset clause in which if you could not give that amount of land revenue to British government on that day or by that time, your land will be taken from you and it will be sold to some other guy. So naturally, it led to many jamidars whose land was somehow taken from them and it was given to someone else. And therefore, these jamidars whose land was taken, they also joined the ranks of disgruntled people, and they also became anti-British and supported the revolt. Raja Kuwar Singh was the biggest example of this. He was also a jamidar whose estate was taken by the British. Now, second is talukdars. Talukdars were somewhere between the peasants and very big landlords, and they were generally in the Awadh region. So when Awadh was annexed, their land was taken by the British, and they also joined the ranks of disgruntled people, and they also played a major role in the revolt. Next is annexation of Awadh. So Awadh was also annexed, and the Bengal army, which was the most powerful army of the British, most of the people were from Awadh, and they were actually soldiers, they were actually peasants by heart. So they also knew the kind of condition back home, how the British is trying to exploit them, and therefore that motivated them to revolt against the Britishers. Next we will deal with social and religious causes. So firstly, the British tried to do a lot of social reforms in India, and they passed number of social legislations. So infanticide was banned, sati was banned, Widow Remarriage Act was enacted in 1756. All these somehow hurted the feelings of reactionary forces in India, and they somehow felt that British is trying to interfere in the social or the religion of these people, and therefore they were also the people who joined the ranks of disgruntled people who joined the rank of revolters. Next we have is missionary activities. So these mission after 1813 Act, it removed all the restrictions on the activities of the missionaries, and they were allowed to settle and preach and propagate and convert the Indians. And the British also passed a law that anyone who changes his religion or who converts to Christianity, he would not lose his inheritance. So he would not lose his case over the inheritance laws. The idea was to motivate people to convert to Christianity. And the missionaries were involved in abuse of Hindu and Islamic religion. They used to kind of, see these religions as contempt, as barbaric, and that naturally also hurted the feelings of Indians, and they thought that the British is trying to impose their religion on us, and that also made them revolt against the British. Lastly, we have military causes. So here the first reason was service condition. So the British or the Indian sepoys, as we have discussed earlier, they were not. The maximum rank they can achieve was subeda. They can never be promoted to the officer's rank. There was massive pay difference between Indian soldiers and the European soldiers. The working conditions were very tough. They hardly have any holidays, and that also somehow that made the sepoys antagonistic towards the British rule. Second cause was withdrawal of allowances, or what we call as bhatta. So earlier, whenever the soldiers used to serve outside their native area, they used to be given allowances, extra allowances for that. But later, British, in order to economize the administration, announced that there will be no extra allowance paid for the service in the faraway land. And thirdly, the General Services Enlistment Act. So this act was passed in 1856, and according to which the soldier when joining has to give a bond that he would be ready to serve anywhere where he will be taken to fort. That naturally hurted the feelings of Hindus, because in Hinduism at that time, to cross the seas meant that you will lose your caste. And most of the soldiers at that time were from upper caste background, and that naturally hurted their feelings also, because they were somehow, they felt that they will not be paid anything extra, and they will lose their caste also if they will fight in Burma or if they will fight in any other place. So, lastly, we will discuss the immediate cause of the movement which led to it, which triggered the revolt. So, the British, they kind of introduced a new rifle called an Enfield rifle, and these Enfield rifle, it consisted of, its thing that consists of pork and cow meat, right? So when the soldier has to fire, he has to first put the cartridge in that, and the cartridge had to be chewed by the mouth, and that cartridge was made of pork and cow. And pork was unclean for Muslims, and it was and cow was holy for Hindus. So that naturally hurted the feelings, or what you call as religious feelings of sepoys. And one sepoy called as Mangal Pandey, he shot his senior officers, and that led to start of beginning of the revolt. After Mangal Pandey, many other soldiers joined the ranks, and in few days, Delhi was captured by the sepoys, because the sepoys from everywhere they started cooching towards Delhi, and when they reached Delhi, they proclaimed Bahadur Shah Jafar as an emperor of India, because at that time Bahadur Shah Jafar, as we have discussed earlier, was the face of Indian nationalism, or what you call as Indian unity. So he was, after much persuasion, he accepted the offer, and then many other states and many other disgruntled states like Jhansi, like Nana Sahib, like other people joined the revolt, and it became it reached almost whole of North India. So let us next look at the centers of revolt. This is important for the prelims exam, because they could ask a center, and they could ask a center and the leader. So they can ask you to match the following. So first center of the revolt was Delhi. In Delhi, symbolically Bahadur Shah Jafar was the ruler, but the entire administration of the army was in the hands of Bakht Khan. Next we have Kanpur. In Kanpur, Nana Sahib, who was the Peshwa, or who was the adopted son of the Peshwa, who was not accepted as Peshwa, and his pension was also stopped. So in Kanpur, the leader of the revolt was Nana Sahib, and Nana Sahib was closely held, or very much held, by two leaders, Tantya Tope and Azimullah. Next we have is Lucknow. In Lucknow, the revolt was led by the wife of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, Begum Mahal, Hazrat Begum Mahal. In Jhansi, it was led by Rani Lakshmi Bai. In Jagdishpur, it was led by Kuwar Singh. In Bareilly, it was led by Khan Bahadur Khan. In in Allahabad and Banaras, other people led, while in Faizabad, it was led by Maulvi Ahmadullah. So these were the main leaders of the revolt, and important for your prelims exam, you have to mug them up. Next we'll deal with is causes of failure of revolt. So within 3 months, this revolt started in May, and by September, the British recaptured Delhi and other areas of North India. And when they captured the family, the Bahadur Shah Zafar and his family, Bahadur Shah Zafar was at that time hiding at Humayun Court. He was kind of imprisoned. His both sons were shot at Khuni Darwaza, which is in Delhi. And Bahadur Shah Zafar was taken to exile to Rangoon, where he died with a very sad couplet which he wrote when he was dying, that kitna badnasib hai tu Zafar, do gaj zameen mein nahi mili kuए yaar mein, which means how unfortunate is you, Mr. Zafar, you even did not get 2 inches of land in the land of your beloved. This is not important for the exam, I'm just telling you history love. So, कितना बदनसीब है तू ज़फ़र, 2 गज ज़मीन में नहीं मिली कुआए यार में. So we examine the causes of failure of revolt. So first reason is that the British were militarily superior to us. So most of the Indian people were fighting with swords and these medieval techniques, while the British army was fighting with bayonets, with guns, and therefore they were no match. The Indian rebels were no match to the British army. Secondly, the rebels were disorganized. There was hardly any proper planning, which went. There were theories which say that there was some planning which went, but mostly the later research indicates that there hardly any planning was done, and it was more of a spontaneous response or more of a disorganized response. Thirdly, the impact of the rebellion was limited to North India. So regions south of India did not participate at all in the war. Punjab, which recently led revolt against the British, also kept silent. Northwest frontier was silent. Many of the Indian princes or many of the Indian kings remained silent, and not just they remained silent, they actually supported the efforts of the British rule, and the most prominent among them were Sindhyas in MP, the ruler of Nepal, and other people. So these people remained loyal and they kind of supported the British army by using their own army in suppressing the revolt. And fourthly, the educated Indians, they were also not involved in the war, or they did not supported the revolt. So generally educated people are the backbone of any revolt because they are the intellectual basis on which people fight. Because you need some intellectual basis to fight, right? You cannot just, if you fight just like that, you will definitely lose the war. So because of lack of participation of educated Indians, the revolt led them intellectual backing. And fifthly, there was no kind of agenda or alternative agenda of the rebels. They all were anti. So they all were anti-British. They all want to replace British with what we call as decentralized India, which was there in the 18th century when Mughal Emperor was, or when the Mughal Empire was becoming weak, and there were a number of autonomous principalities which emerged. So their only direction was that, right? They were regressive in their nature. The modern nationalism was hardly existent, so they did not have any alternative plan where they would talk of equality or some kind of democracy. And naturally, that meant that the intelligentsia was not influenced or not attracted towards the revolt, because they felt that at least the British are spreading modern education, modern values in the country, and therefore they are required to stay here. So these are the factors which led to the revolt of, or which led to the failure of revolt of 1857. Next we have is nature of the revolt. Sorry, not the nature of the revolt. Next we have is the impact of the revolt. So the first impact and the major impact was the rule or the control of Indian administration was transferred from East India Company to the Crown. So earlier, indirectly the Crown used to rule by kind of controlling the East India Company. But now the rule directly passed from East India Company to the British Crown. And 1858 Act did that. So when we will kind of study constitutional development in India, at that time we will be focusing on that. Secondly, the Queen, or it ended the process of annexation of the states. So till 1857, the British was trying to annex any state it wants on the pretext of any excuse. Therefore, naturally the Indian princely states, they were feeling very insecure. But in 1857, the British realized that these Indian native states are bulwark against the rising tide of Indian nationalism, and therefore it is better to keep them as friends and allies rather than to antagonize them. So the British, or the Queen proclamation kind of announced clearly that from now on we will not focus on new annexation of territories. Our focus will only be on consolidation of the existing territories, right? So British left the old practice of annexing any new states, and that gave security to the Indian native states, and they became biggest allies of the British. Thirdly, it made the British realize that social reforms would antagonize the Indians. And they felt that Indians are beyond the reforms. I mean, they are barbaric people and they should be left like they are living right now. So before 1857, the British government was showing zeal to undertake large number of social reforms in India. But after 1857, they became more conservative and they hardly brought any reforms after 1857. So it kind of transformed the British administration from liberal to conservative. Also, there was changes in the army. So the British realized that the reason why we had to face this revolt was because there are very few Europeans and there are a large number of Indians. So therefore the share of European soldiers in each regiment increased, and also there was this concept of martial race which emerged after the revolt, and those kind of people who helped the British to suppress the revolt, they were considered or they were given preference in army recruitment. So people from Punjab, Gurkhas, people from Northeast Frontier province, they were recruited in large number in army because the British felt that they were more loyal to the British rule. It increased the racialism. So it increased the racism of the British rule because they felt that somehow, these Indians cannot be trusted. They are untrusty people, they untrustworthy people, and therefore it somehow increased the bitterness between the British and the Indians. It actually increased the bitterness more among the British and the Muslims because the British officers kind of felt that the Muslims were responsible for the revolt. They were the main causes. Therefore, the Hindus were given more preference in the first 2 decades after the revolt. After that, they changed it and they gave Muslims more preference. That was synonymous to their ideology of divide and rule. So this ends the very important topic for April 1857 revolt. Next, we will be dealing with social reforms or the social reformers. So, we'll start with the new chapter, which is social reformers in India. So, first we'll discuss the causes of social reform movement. So as you know, the social reform movement in India started in 19th century with the arrival of the British. At that time, there were a number of reasons why this movement started. Firstly, with the advent of British introduced modern ideas in India. So with themselves, they brought modern education in India. With this modern education, the native Indians who kind of studied that, they realized that there are a lot of problems in the Indian system, in the Indian religions, and that also made them aware of new concepts of nationalism, secularism, liberalism. So these concepts made them kind of try to undertake social reforms in India. Secondly, the condition of Indian society. So Indian society at that time was very, very stagnant. We had number of social evils like sati, like child marriage, like infanticide, female infanticide, like very miserable treatment of widows, and other things. We believed in superstition. So it was basically a static and a stagnant society. And that also, with the advent of modern education, that made some Indians realize that we have to reform our society in order to progress. Thirdly, effort of the European Orientalist. See, when the British came to India, they were not racist from the start. When they came to India, people like Warren Hastings, people like Munro, they were not actually, they did not have the feeling of racism inside them. They were very, very admirer of Indian civilization. They believed that Indian culture and Indian civilization is different from the British, but they were not naturally inferior from them, right? So all these people, this group is called as Orientalists. These people who wanted Indian sciences and Indian education to be promoted. So these people, they established institutions like Calcutta Madrasa. They translated Indian books like Upanishads, like Ramayana and Mahabharata in English. They tried to study the Indian history, and they kind of came out with the conclusion that we were not always like this. We were earlier a very progressive, very modern society. We were doing wonders in ancient India, and therefore that naturally gave a sense of pride to the Indians, and they felt that they tried to explore the reasons why we became so kind of corrupted. Our social order became so corrupted, and then they kind of tried to understand that why should we or how should we bring back the old glory. And then they realized that the only way to do that is to undertake social reforms. And fourthly, detrimental effects of Christian missionaries. So these Christian missionaries, they were actually abusing the Indian religions like hell. They believed that they kind of saying that these are barbaric religions. They were kind of trying to proselytize the Indians. They were trying to give them offers that, see, your religion is so bad, you have so many evils, come to Christianity. So the Indian reformers thought that, or the Indians, some kind of enlightened Indians thought that the only way to end this onslaught of Christian missionaries attack on Hinduism is to reform Hinduism and to abolish all these decadent acts and kind of customs. So that is why also they underwent towards social reform movement. So there were two kinds of movements. Social reform movement in India can be marked by two schools of thoughts. One was reformist and second was revivalist. So the reformists accepted that yes, a number of elements of corruption has entered the Hindu religion or the Islamic religion, and therefore, these practices need to be ended so that we can progress further, right? That was the concept of the reformism. But the revivalists believe that we don't want to reform. Our religion does not want, our religion does not want reform. Our religion wants revival, which means that we should go back again to that age which was the golden age where these things were not existing. Right? They thought that there was this golden age in which all these practices which we do now, all these bad practices, they were never there. So they said that we should go back to this old age or this ancient age where these practices, where we were having a very golden world. Right? So they were not in favor of reform, but they were in favor of revival. The main among them were Arya Samaj, Wahhabism movement, Theosophical Society. All these were part of revivalist movement. They said go back to Vedas. Between the Vedas or the period of golden age, and all these corrupt activities came in between, and therefore they need to be scrapped. So next we start with is the nature and character of our social reform movement. Firstly, they were liberal and progressive. When we talk of nature and character, we are talking here of the reformist movement, not the revivalist movement. So they were liberal and progressive, they were forward thinking, they wanted to end all the regressive activities. They were inspired by modern ideas, right? They were inspired by the modern ideas. Secondly, they were focused basically on religious reforms. But at that time, all the social evils had the mandate in the religion. Therefore, they realized that without undergoing for religious reform, they cannot undertake social reform. Because all the social evils like child marriage, like infanticide, like sati, somehow had the mandate of some school of thought of religion. Right? Thirdly, they were assimilating in character. They assimilated the ideals of the East and the West. So they believed that, or they took rationalism and scientific attitude from the West, but they rejected materialism and racism. Similarly, they took simplicity and value from the East, but they somehow rejected narrowness and bigotry. Fourthly, it was egalitarian. So it talked of unity of humans, it talked of lack of child, it talked of caste equality. Next is that they somehow emphasize the common aspect of Indian culture, which weakens the divisive element and created a sense of common nationhood. And lastly, they were humanist and non-violent in their thinking. Next we talk is the significance. So they kind of created awakening among the masses, and they were the cultural backbone of rise of political nationalism in the later, because they tried to bring out in open the past glory of India. This somehow instilled pride among Indians. They thought that we were not always like this. We had a very ancient and very powerful empire and civilization that increased the feeling of nationalism among the people. Secondly, they supported the cause of education. They founded a lot of education institutions which increased the spread of modern education in India. And thirdly, they encouraged the vernacular language and press. So they kind of, a lot of the kind of literary works were translated in vernacular languages, like Raja Ram Mohan Roy translated many texts in Bengali. So this is also one of the great significance of that. So we'll start with social reformers and organizations related to social reform. So we'll first start with social reformers and social organizations of Bengal. So firstly we start with Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who is called the father of Indian Renaissance. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy, very favorite topic of UPSC. Last 2-3 years they were not asking, but they have asked many times earlier. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy is called as father of Indian or modern India because he was very modern in his outlook. He was a journalist, he was a reformer, he was a humanist, he was a writer, so he was an educationist, he was a multifaceted personality. And let us see the kind of reforms he did. So firstly, we start with his educational reforms. So he established Society for Translating European Sciences. He helped in the establishment of colleges like Hindu College, Sanskrit College, and Vedanta College. And thirdly, he was also a journalist. So he published his journal known as Samvad Comedy. Also, he wrote a Persian paper known as Mirat ul Akbar. Now let's come for his political ideology. So he was the first person in India who organized India's first political agitation to demand for greater social reforms. He was also an internationalist, which can be seen from the fact when the revolt in Naples in Italy failed, or when there was failure there, he kind of fasted. He was very unhappy with that. So let's now understand his position, or let's read, let's analyze his religious and social reforms. So Raja Ram Mohan Rai was a pragmatic. He knew that Indians take their religion too seriously. He knew that Indians are very much attached to their religion, right? So he knew that if I have to bring reform in India, I have to tell them that, see, what I am doing or what I am propagating is not anti-Hindu. His idea was that what I am propagating is there in the Vedas. It is there in the ancient inscriptions. We have somehow corrupted ourselves over the course of time. And therefore, what I am saying is not, it's wrong. So according to him, sati was wrong, not because it was unjust, it was inhuman, which were modern ideologies. Next he did was social reform. So in case of social reforms, he proceeded against social evils like sati, polygamy, domination of caste, child marriage, infanticide, and illiteracy. However, his main focus was on women empowerment. He did not take the cause of caste system very seriously. He just went with one or two things, but mostly he focused on women empowerment. He was naturally hurted by sati because sati was his own sister-in-law had to face that. So after that, he kind of enlightened himself and said that this is a practice which is inhuman and barbaric. One trivia is that he is given this Raja title by Mughal Emperor Akbar II. Akbar too gave him this title of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Now let's go to the next social reformer, which is Keshav Chandra Sen. A question was asked on him, I think in 2016 prelims exam. So Keshav Chandra Sen was also believer in the ideology of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and he was closely involved with the Brahma Samaj movement. So he he introduced or he founded a number of organizations like Sangat Sabha, Indian Reform Association, and Bharatiya Varshya Brahma Samaj. He also has one newspaper known as Indian Mirror. These trivia you have to remember for your exam. Right? These are his three major organizations, and this was his newspaper, Indian Mirror. So, Devendranath Tagore, who belonged to this illustrious Tagore family and who was the father of Rabindranath Tagore, Keshav Chandra Sen and Tagore worked together in the Brahma Samaj, but Keshav Chandra Sen was more radical in his views. He wanted to completely, bring Brahma Samaj out of Hinduism. However, Devendranath Tagore was little conservative, and he believed that radical reforms are not needed, and we have to go slow, right? Because he believed that Indian masses will not accept such radical reforms, and on that issue, a split happened in the Brahma Samaj organization, and Keshav Chandra Sen formed Bharatiya Varshya Brahma Samaj, while Devendranath Tagore, he formed the Adi Brahma Samaj. So, Adi Brahma Samaj was founded by Devendranath Tagore, while Bharatiya Varshya Brahma Samaj was formed by Keshav Chandra Sen. Now, the second split also happened in this Brahma Samaj movement, and this happened when Keshav Chandra Sen, who propagated against child marriage, married his own daughter or own minor daughter to the prince of Kuch Bihar. So therefore his followers were very antagonist with this act because they believed that he is not following what he preaches. When they went to Keshav Chandra Sen and asked, why did you do that? Keshav Chandra Sen said that it was by the God's will it happened. So naturally second split also happened in the Brahma Samaj movement, and Keshav Chandra Sen formed a new organization called as Navvidhan. But with this act, he remained discredited among his followers, and this new organization Navvidhan did not attract many followers. So Keshav Chandra Sen started as a very, very radical person who was somehow very much influenced by Christianity. But later, during his age, he became more of a moderate reformer. Next we have is Devendranath Tagore was father of Rabindranath Tagore. He formed two important organizations. Firstly, he formed the Tattvabodhi Sabha, and secondly, after the split with Keshav Chandra Sen, he formed the Adi Brahma Samaj. Next reformer we'll deal with is Bijoy Goswami. So Bijoy Goswami, there is nothing much here. His only thing is that he took the Brahma Samaj movement outside the elite circles of Calcutta and he popularized it in rural Bengal. Next we have is Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. So Ishwarchandra Vidyasagar was also a social reformer, philosopher and educationist, and he devoted his whole life for the empowerment or for championing the cause of women empowerment. So first of all, he wanted to modernize the Orthodox Hindu society from within, and let's look at his contribution towards the empowerment of the woman. So he not just supported, he actually kind of launched a movement against the or for the widow remarriage. And his efforts brought fruit when in 1856 widow remarriage was allowed by the government. Secondly, he worked for the education of the women. So he, as a secretary of the Bethune school, he kind of promoted the women's education. Also, he was the principal of Sanskrit school or Sanskrit college, where he introduced the Western thought. He was also a believer in caste equality, therefore he opened the school to people belonging to all the caste or all the caste, because earlier only the higher caste people were allowed to have education. He opened the school to the people of all castes. Fifthly, he contributed to Bengali language. He modernized Bengali prose and he devised the new Bengali primer. He also simplified the Bengali alphabet and type. He also published a newspaper which is known as Hindu Patriot. This is very important for the exam. Right? These are the main aspects related to the personality of Ishwarchandra Vidyasagar. Next we have is Young Bengal movement. So it was founded by an Anglo-Indian known as Henry Vivian Derozio. He was a teacher or a professor in Hindu college, and he and his followers were very radical in their thought because they were young. They wanted to have a radical reforms in the field of religion and society. So they wanted to end this caste system, these practices like kind of adultery, priestly domination, child marriage. They kind of propagated the widow remarriage. They believed that every text, every line of a religion should be critically analyzed. They believed that everything should be questioned. Nothing should be kept as a sacrosanct. They were firm believers in the ideology of rationality, and they were so ahead of their times. In 2018, we have a chief minister of a state which believes that lakhs of years ago we had internet. Right? This is a situation in 2018. And these young chaps in 1826 were talking of rationality, were talking of scientific temper. So somehow they were very, very ahead of their times. And that was the reason why they did not reach the masses, because masses at that time was very much deeply embedded in religion. They were not ready to accept such so radical views. Because the reason why Raja Ram Mohan Roy and other reformers succeeded is because they did not try to break away from Hinduism. They somehow kind of try to prove that see these practices have no sanctity in Hinduism. That is why we want this to be disallowed. But these people criticize Hinduism as a whole. They believe that this is outdated religion. So that is why they somehow they limited or their impact limited to or their impact remained limited to urban areas only. So they founded a society for acquisition of general knowledge. Right? In which they advocated social reforms. They were very Anglicized, they had very much contempt about the Indian culture, and therefore they did not succeed. Let's move to the next important movement, which is Ramakrishna Mission. So Ramakrishna Mission was formed by an ascetic, Sri Ram or Swami Ram Krishna Paramhans, and he belonged to what we call as revivalist school of thought. He was not he was not a firm believer of modern ideas, but he opposed these practices like caste system, caste system, priestly domination, sati, all these things he kind of opposed. They even favored the education of the women because they believed that these things existed in the ancient India, and we have become degraded. The Hindu mind has become degraded, and that is the reason of their misery. So he and his disciple, which is Swami Vivekananda, they preached the Hindu kind of gospel all over the world, and they tried to, enlighten people that, see, what you are practicing is very corrupted form of Hinduism. You are practicing a very complicated form of Hinduism. Hinduism in itself is very simple, right? And by sheer logic, Swami Vivekananda tried to counter the onslaught of the British missionary. So the British missionary termed Indians as idolater, that they consider idol as a god, right? So there is a very interesting story with respect to that. So Swami Vivekananda was called by a viceroy or not a viceroy or by a king, and the king was very rationalist in his views, and the king then told him that why do you worship this stone? Why do you worship these photos? And why do you consider them as why do you consider these photos as God? So he then asked the king that, do you have your father's photo? And then he was taken there, and Vivekananda then kind of, he split it. He spit it on that picture. And then the king was very angry and he said, how dare you do that? How dare you disrespect my father's portrait? And then he said that, see, you became anguished because your father's portrait has been I have put it on them. So it's your respect for that photo. So similarly, the Indians does not worship the idol. We have respect for the idol because we believe that we want to concentrate to the God, right? So we have two options. We can either just imagine in our mind that this is the shape of the God, or we can have a photo in front of us, and that photo can give us kind of a satisfaction. And since this photo is of the God, we respect the photo. We don't worship the photo. We kind of respect the photo. So he also went to Chicago and tried to, in the world religious congress, and tried to put forward the Indian philosophy to the world. Next we deal with is the another social reformer, another revivalist movement, which is known as Arya Samaj. So Arya Samaj was started by Dayanand Saraswati. So Arya Samaj believed that the only true source of Hinduism, is the Vedas. The Vedas are the only true source of Hinduism, and all other books or all other texts, later texts like Puranas, like Smritis, they are corrupted texts and they should be discarded by the Hindus. They should only believe in the Vedas, and therefore he gave the slogan of go back to Vedas. And he believed that in Vedas there was no social evils that we are facing right now. So he believed that in Vedas there was nothing like caste system, or nothing like child marriage, or nothing like sati, or nothing like polytheism. The Vedas propagate monotheism. It has options for education of women. It disregards caste system and child marriage, adultery, and child marriage. Right? So, if we follow the Vedas, everything would be fine. So, he also, this Arya Samaj movement, later they also focused on Shuddhi. They were part of Shuddhi movement and Gauraksha Samitis. So this Shuddhi movement was focused on reconversion of recent converts from Hinduism to other religions. Because they believed that only by making the religion flexible like this, only by making it egalitarian, only by winning the trust of lower caste Hindus, we can reconvert the Hindus who have converted to other religions back to Hinduism. So first they focused on that, and after they focused on this Shuddhi movement. Second thing they focused was on Gauraksha Samitis. So Gauraksha Samitis were against the cow slaughter. They tried to protect the cow from being slaughtered. So after the death of Dayanand Saraswati has also written one book which is known as Satyarth Prakash, very important for your exam. He actually also gave the theory of Chaturvarna, which means that no one should be given the title of Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishyas or Shudras by their birth, based on their occupation, because they believed that in Vedas this caste system was based on occupation. Therefore, they believed that there should be this concept of Chaturvarna should be reintroduced, where nobody should be called as a Brahman because of his birth, but he should be called Brahman only because of his virtue and only because of its deeds. Right? So, after the death of Dayanand Saraswati, the Arya Samajis, they focused a lot on education. Therefore, they opened these DAV schools all over India. DAV schools and colleges. And the focus of DAV schools and colleges was on mixing the Indian school or mixing the Indian traditions with the Western education. So that was somehow a collusion of Indian customs and the modern education. Now let's look into the reformers of Western India. So first is servants of India's society. So this servants of India society was founded by Gopal Krishna Gokhale, and the main focus of the society was to train national missionaries for or to have a dedicated group of people who can do social service and who can focus on reforms. And these reforms include working with the tribals and the depressed, working in for the famine relief, working for the upliftment of the poor people. So for that they formed the Servants of India Society. Next we have is D.K. Karve. So D.K. Karve was a social reformer and educator. He was a teacher in Ferguson College in Pune, and his wife died at an early age and he married a widow. So he was a firm believer on widow remarriage. Also, he opened up a institute, or he opened up a widow home for Hindus. And in these widow homes, the widows were not just educated, they were also skilled so that they can take care of their own self. He also founded India's first educational university for women, and the name of the university was Srimati Nati Bhai Damodar Thakursi Women's University. Name is not important. What is important is that he opened a Women University in 1960. He widened his social efforts, and he also focused on increasing primary education in the villages. Next we have is Pratana Samaj. So the Pratana Samaj was founded in 1867 by Atmaram Pandurang. Name is important. However, later it is joined by M.G. Ranade, Mahadev Govind Ranade, who was an economist and a social reformer and a judge. So after he joined this Pratana Samaj, it came into prominence. So what was the focus of this? So the focus of this Pratana Samaj was it denounced idolatry, priestly domination, caste rigidities, and preferred monotheism. Also, it concentrated on social reforms like interdining, intermarriage, widow remarriage, and upliftment of women and depressed classes. Also, it drew from Christianity and Buddhism. It also sought truth in all religions. It believed that all religions propagate truth. Next we have is Paramhans Mandali. So, Paramhans Mandli was it was founded by Dadoba Pandurang. Don't get confused by Atmaram Pandurang, he is different. He founded the Pratana Samaj. But Dadoba Pandurang and Bal Shastri Jambekar they formed the Paramhans Mandli. So it was a secret organization where all the members were required to take the pledge that they would abandon caste restrictions and take food and drinks prepared by a member of a lower caste. Also, these Mandli met in secret, and it was a secret organization because they don't want to earn the ire of the conservative section. So they believe that God should be worshipped alone and there should be freedom in religion and everybody should have freedom of thought, action and speech. They also fought against the Brahminical monopoly of religion. They believed that religion should be open to all and all castes should have an opportunity to study the text. Next we have is Gopal Ganesh Agarkar. So this Gopal Ganesh Agarkar was a Brahmin social reformer, educationist and thinker from Maharashtra. See, that is common among that all the social reformers, whether in Bengal or in Maharashtra, except probably Jyotiba Phule and Ambedkar, they were all Brahmins. Because the reason was that Brahmins were first enlightened. They first got access to this modern education. And because they got access to modern education, they were the first one who realized that somehow our texts discriminate against the lower caste or they discriminate against the woman. That is why they launched this social reform movement. So, Agarkar was the co-founder of educational institutes like New English School, Deccan Education Society, Ferguson College. He was also the founder of Ferguson College. Well, he was associated with press also, so he was the first editor of the weekly Kesari. And also, he was the founding editor of a periodical named as Sudharak. You need to mark these two names, very important for the exam. Because they asked on Kesar Singh 2 years back, probably next time they will ask on Agarkar. Next is Jyotiba Phule or Mahatma Phule. So Jyotiba Phule belonged to the Mali caste, and Malis were technically OBCs, which means they were Shudras. There were two categories of Shudras. One was Shudras, which were touchable Shudras, and then there was Ati Shudras, which could be called as the modern Dalits. So, this guy Phule was very much against Brahminical domination. And also against the Aryans. Because he believed that it is the Aryans who brought this barbaric culture to India. It is the Aryans who brought this caste system, this sati, the child marriage, everything was brought by them. Right? So therefore he believed that the natives or the Dravidians were more superior than the Aryans because they were basically the people who were more civilized, right? Secondly, he was a very strong critic of untouchability, and therefore he started a school for the untouchables. Secondly, he also actually wrote two books on the anti-Brahmin, or what you call as empowerment of the lower caste, and these include Sarvajanik Satya Dharma. And second book he wrote was Gulamgiri. Right? These are the two books he wrote, and you have to remember that Sarvajanik Satya Dharma and Gulamgiri. He also wanted to liberate the depressed class and make them conscious of their rights by educating them, and therefore he founded the Satya Sodhak Samaj. So Satya Sodhak Samaj was founded for empowering the depressed classes. He and his wife, Savitribai Phule, also worked towards empowerment of women, and they were perhaps one of the first kind of couples who started a girls' school. He also believed that the British were the person who were enlightened, as they are not supportive of the Varnashram system, and therefore he considered the Britishers better than the Muslim and the Hindu rulers. So one more thing is that his newspaper name was Dingbandhu. Again, it's important trivia for your prelims. Right, so we move to the next social reformer. Next we deal with this Gopal Hari Deshmukh. So Gopal Hari Deshmukh was also known as Lok Hitwadi, and he was a product of Western learning in India. So he was a judge and he was a member of Governor General's Council, which means he was kind of a brown sahib of that time. But he was firm believer in self-reliance, and that can be judged by the fact that he attended the Delhi Darbar wearing a hand-spun khadi. So he was a firm believer that we should focus on promotion of our indigenous kind of cloths. He also is a firm believer in rational outlook. He believed that everything should be critically examined, nothing should be a taboo. Discussion on nothing should be a taboo. And he wrote number of articles on social issues, also on outdated social values, how there is dominance of religion in social life, and also on selfishness of the upper class. He supported the cause of the woman and he advocated for women education. He was called as Lok Hitwadi. Now let's deal with other miscellaneous Hindu social reform organizations. So first one is philosophical society. So it was founded by Madam Blavatsky and Colonel H.C. Olcott. So, but later it became or it was popularized by Annie Besant. So here's a trivia UPSC can ask that it was founded by Annie Besant. So Annie Besant joined it later. It was founded by Madam Blavatsky and H.S. Olcott. So the focus of this society was on reigniting the ancient Indian religions, and the focus was on Hinduism. So it was a kind of a revivalist movement. Because they believed that only the Indian civilization can only be kind of progressed if we revive, strengthen, and uplift the ancient religion. So they believed in four things. They had four essential features. Their philosophy had four features. Firstly, there should be the unity of Godhead. Secondly, there should be threefold emanation of God. Thirdly, there is hierarchy of beings. Firstly, there is goods, then angels, then human spirits, and fourthly, it talked of universal brotherhood. So, Mr. Annie Besant, who was part of this organization, he set up Central Hindu School for the purpose of achieving these objectives. He also laid the foundation of BHU, again to achieve its objectives. Next we have is Deva Samaj. So Deva Samaj was founded in 1887 by Shiv Narayan Agnotri. And it believed, or the sect believed, in the supremacy of the Guru and the need for the good action. Therefore, it called for an ideal social behavior where there should be non-acceptance of bribe, alcohol would be avoided, non-veg food would be avoided. So it wanted to have the ideal human society. Next we have is Dharm Sabha. It was founded by Radhakant Dev. It was not actually a social reform organization. It was actually, it believed in status quo, which means that it even opposed the abolition of sati. It also, favored child marriage. However, it propagated for promotion of Western education among the women. Next we have is Radha Swami movement. So this Radha Swami movement was started by a banker known as Tulsi Ram. And the Radha Swamis, they believed in one supreme being. They believed in supremacy of the Guru and also on company of pious people. Next we have is Narayan Malhar Joshi. So N.M. Joshi was a follower of Gopal Krishna Gokhale and he founded Social Service League. Don't get confused with Servants of India Society, which was founded by uh, Gopal Krishna Gokhale. So he founded the Social Service League. He also founded the All India Trade Union Congress. Next we have is Vishnu Shastri Pandit. He was associated with Widow Remarriage Organization. He kind of formed that. Next we have is Sri Narayan Guru. Actually, I missed Ambedkar in this because Ambedkar I'll deal with when I deal with the most important political personalities of India's freedom struggle. So in that I will deal with Ambedkar not just as a social reformer, but Ambedkar as a humanist, as a politician, Ambedkar as a founder of Indian Constitution, as a champion of the women, as a champion of the lower classes. So I'll discuss that when I will be discussing the important political leaders associated with the freedom struggle. So Sri Narayan Guru was a social reformer of India. He belonged to Izhava caste. And Izhavas were considered as untouchable at that time. So his focus was on, it's clear that because he was from Izhava caste, his focus was on abolition of caste, on creating a caste-less society, on improving spiritual freedom and social equality. So he stressed the need for spiritual and social uplift of the downtrodden by their own efforts through establishment of temples and educational institutions. He also visited Aributpuram, where he and his followers erected a temple dedicated to Shiva in 1888, defying the tradition that this was done by Brahmins alone. So he constructed a temple for Shiva because he believed that Shiva is not a monopoly of only Brahmins. I as a Hindu can also go or build a temple. That is why he built a temple. In 1913, this is important for the exam, he founded the Advait Ashram. And ashram was dedicated to the Om Sahibhumi Sarvatra, which means universal brotherhood. Next we have is Periyar, who was in news recently when his statue was demolished allegedly by a few right-wing people. So Periyar or E.V. Ramaswamy was a social reformer for Tamil Nadu. He was a rationalist, he was a social reformer, he was a champion for the lower classes, he was a champion for the women empowerment. He had a very famous quote where he said that Brahmanism cannot be amended, it can only be ended. So he was a very radical reformer. He had no middle ground. He believed that it is these North Indian people who brought this beastly culture which talks of dividing people on the basis of their caste. He believed that, this Manu was the evil, or he was the source of all the evil, and therefore he kind of tell people to avoid religion. He was actually an atheist. So he said that people to think rationally. He propagated education for the women. He told people to avoid surnames. He kind of opposed child marriage. He opposed idol worship. In fact, he used to beat the idols with chappals. or the sleepers to kind of tell Hindus that, see, I'm doing that and still nothing wrong would be done to me. So he was a kind of a very champion, or what you call as very radical reformer. He started with Congress, but later he realized that Congress is dominated by Brahmins, and therefore he left it to form what you call as the Justice Party. Later, this party's name was changed to Dravida Kazhagam. Right? Next we have is KV Patul. So KV Patul published, or he was a social reformer from South India, and he published Viveka Vardhani, and he opened the first school for girls in 1874 in South India, and he also made widow remarriage and female education the key point of his program for social reform. He also launched the anti-Nautch movement. Nautch girls were dancing girls. Now let's deal with reform movement among the Muslims. So, see, naturally, the power was thrown from Mughals to the British. So many Muslims believe that they were the rulers before, and now they have become kind of, they have become a slave. So somehow for the first 50 years or 100 years of the British rule, they tried to avoid anything which they consider were British or Christianized. While the Hindus on the same hand, especially in Bengal, they tried to take a modern education, they tried to undertake social reforms, and that led to backwardness among the Muslim community. So for the first 100 years when the British was established, you had number of revivalist movement in Muslims. Those movements who believe that the modern day Islam has become corrupted because of Hindu and other influences, and we should move back to the puritanical form of Islam which was practiced in the 6th century or the 7th century AD. The only reformist movement which emerged in Muslims was the Aligarh movement. So we'll start with the revivalist movement. First movement was Farazi movement. So this Farazi movement wanted, or it emerged among the peasants in Bengal, and it wanted them to return to the pure Islam, which is not corrupted from any non-Islamic deeds. So they followed the teachings of Shah Waliullah and talked about regaining purity of Islam and objected to infiltration of non-Islamic customs among the Muslims. The founding leaders of this movement was Haji Shariatullah. Right? He was the founding, founding member of this movement. They also preached that every Muslim should do obligatory duties of Islam, which means they should have kalima or kalma, do salat, which means to do namaz, to do roza, to do zakat, and to undergo for hajj. They also preached tawheed or monotheism. Next is Wahhabi movement. So the Wahhabis, they were technically more extreme form of Islam, and right now the problem the world is facing is because of Wahhabism, rise of Wahhabism, Saudi-sponsored Wahhabism. So Wahhabism started in Saudi Arabia, but later came to India and other countries also. And Wahhabism believed that complete theoretical form of Islam, which is completely devoid of all the local culture. So means that you should follow what is practiced in the 7th century. And therefore it started in India also. So it started in India after the spread of Christianity, when many Muslims believe that there is a threat that a lot of Muslims will get converted to Christianity. Therefore, they kind of launched this movement. So this movement, or they aimed at replacement of the British rule by the rule of true believers, and they also played a major role in the 1857 revolt also in instigating anti-British sentiments. They played a major role. They also somehow resisted the English education, and they tried to keep the Muslim society aloof of the Western influence. Next we have is Deoband school. So Deoband school, or this movement, was started by orthodox section among the Muslim ulemas, and it was a revivalist movement with twin objectives. Firstly, to propagate among the Muslims the pure teachings of the Quran and Hadith, and secondly to keep alive the spirit of jihad against the foreign rulers. But one good thing about this Deoband movement was that it was completely nationalistic in its fervor. So Deoband movement opposed the partition of India. It believed that secular India, there should be secular India rather than have a Islamic or a Hindu state. Next we have is Aligarh movement, or Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. So Sir Syed Ahmad Khan was the first, or he could be called as the Raja Ram Mohan Roy of the Muslims, because he was the first reformer who actually tried to reform the Muslim society. So he went to England, he stayed in England, and then he realized that, the cause of backwardness of Muslims is because there is lack of acceptance to modern education by the Muslims. And he believed that only way to achieve progress of Muslims is by propagating modern education among the Muslims, and by reforming few of the degraded elements in Islam, like polygamy, like weed. So he actually believed that more and more Muslims should go for European science and European scientific education. So one important thing is that he started an paper which is known as Tajib al-Akhlaq. And also in 1866 he formed the British India Association. So you should remember the key newspaper and association associated with the leader. He believed that Quran should be the actual source, and he believed there is no contradiction between Quran and natural sciences. He believed in, or he somehow did rational interpretation of Quran so that it suits the need of the 19th century. He also told the Muslims to keep aloof from politics, because he believed that time is not right for the politics of Muslims, and they should completely keep aloof from joining organizations like Congress. And he believed that he kind of propagated loyalty among the Muslims for the British. He believed in the unity of Hindu and Muslims initially. Later on, he somehow moved towards what we call as soft Islamism, where he tried to propagate fear among the Muslims about domination of Hindu rule, etc. and etc. Best thing about him was that he founded the Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College in 1875. And later, this school was converted into full-fledged university, and non-Hindus were also admitted in this college. So in this college, everything, science and technology was taught in an Islamic environment. Next we have is Arab movement. So, since Sir Syed Ahmad Khan opposed the joining of Muslims for Congress, and he somehow propagated loyalty towards the British rule, many nationalist Muslims many nationalist and liberal Muslims founded the Arab movement to oppose the politics of Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, and they kind of wanted the Muslims to join the nationalist struggle in large number. Number of people who were included in that were Maulana Muhammad Ali, Hakim Azmul Khan, Hassan Imam, and Maulana Zafar Ali Khan. Next we have is Sikh reform movement. So when we talk of Sikh reform movement, the first was the Nirankaris. And they were actually, as the name suggests, they believe that the God is shapeless and formless. It does not have any form or shape. That is why it is called as Nirankar. And it was founded by Baba Dayal Das, very important for the exam. It told his followers to reject idolatry. It prohibited them from eating meat, drinking liquor, lying and cheating. Also, it laid emphasis on Guru Nanak and on Sikhism before the establishment of Khalsa by the last Guru, Gobind Singh. So it did not focus on the militaristic aspect of Sikhism. It focused basically more on teachings of Guru Nanak. Next is Namdhari movement. So this movement was founded by Baba Ram Singh. And the movement was founded on the set of rituals modeled after Guru Gobind Singh's founding of Khalsa. So they believed that each Sikh should follow these 5 Ks which the Guru Gobind Singh propagated, but the only difference is that except of sword, they believed that the Sikh should carry with them sticks. So instead of swords, they believed that the Sikh should carry the sticks. Also, they believed that idols should not be worshipped, snakes should not be worshipped, trees should not be worshipped. They also told their leaders or their followers to abstain from drinking and from consumption of beef. Next we have Singh Sabha. So Singh Sabha was founded by Gyani Gyan Singh, with the objective to restore the Sikhism to its pristine purity. So it believed that with time the Sikhism has somehow corrupted under the influence of other religions, and therefore it talked of returning to the original form of Sikhism, which was pure and pristine. Also, it focused on reconversion, like the Shuddhi movement of the Arya Samajis. It also propagated on reconversion of those Sikhs who got converted into Christianity. Last Sikh reform movement we will deal with is the Gurudwara reform movement. So this movement was, before the 1920s, the Sikh Gurdwaras were run by Udasi Mahants. And these Udasi Mahants treated the Gurdwaras as their source of income and as their own field. And they tried to appropriate as much income from the followers. They were pro-British, they were very, very greedy, and they were dishonest. Therefore, a movement was launched by people of Sikh community to liberate the Gurudwaras from these Udasi Mahants, and that is why this Gurudwara reform movement was launched, and they demanded freeing the Gurudwaras from these corrupt Mahants and of handing these Gurdwaras to a representative body of the Sikhs. So under the growing pressure of the nationalists and the agitators, the Gurudwara came under the control of the election committee known as the Shiromani Gurudwara Prabandhak Committee. Lastly, we will deal with the Parsi reform movement. There can be two important movements which we will discuss. First is the Rahnumai Mazdayan Sabha. And this is a Parsi reform society formed by a small number of educated Parsis, and they started their journal, which was known as Rast Guftar. This is very important for your exam. It was actually founded by Furdonji Naroji and SS Bengali. So the focus of this organization criticized elaborate ceremonies which the Parsis used to do at marriage and funerals, and they opposed infant marriage and the use of astrology. Lastly, we'll deal with another Parsi reformer, which is Behramji Malawari. So Behramji Malawari was an Indian poet, author and a social reformer who dedicated his life fighting against child marriage. So he fought strongly against what we call as age of consent bill. So there was this woman who was married as a child, and then she got separated. The court ordered that that woman should either be arrested if he will not return to the husband. So at that time there was this debate going on that the age of consent should be increased for the women. People like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who were nationalists, but somehow in this case, their approach was very regressive, and they somehow opposed the age of consent bill because they believe that this is interference in the culture of Hindus. But Malabari fought strongly against that bill, or he said that this bill should be passed, and he believed that child marriage is an inhuman practice. He also he also worked towards widowhood. So he founded the Seva Sadan, and that Seva Sadan worked as a social reform and humanitarian organization. So this Seva Sadan specialized in the care of socially discarded and exploited women of all castes by providing them with education, welfare and medical services. Next we deal with is the women organizations, which means that the organizations which were founded by the woman itself. So first women organization is Bharat Mahila Parishad. It was part of National Social Conference to provide a forum for discussion on social issues. Next we have is Arya Mahila Samaj. And this organization was founded by Pandita Ramabai to provide opportunities for education of women. So focus of the organization was on education of women. It was founded by Pandita Ramabai. Next we have is Bharati or Bharat Stri Mahamandal. This was founded by Sarla Devi Chaudharani at Allahabad. So the focus of this Mahamandal was with regard to Parda, and it said that Parda is the main block towards or main stumbling block to female education, and it focused on female education, child marriage and woman status in a family. Next we have is Women India Association. So this organization was founded by an Irish feminist, Dorothy Regina Rajadasa, and its membership was open to both Indians and Europeans. So Annie Besant became its first president, and the principal work of this organization was educational. Next we have is National Council of Women in India. So this organization, it was an all India organization which was affiliated to the International Council of Women and Mary Bai Tata, who was the wife of Dora Tata. He played a key role in its advancement. Lastly, there is All India Women's Conference. So this All India Women's Conference was one of the most important organization which was secular in its outlook. So AIWC was started by Margaret Cousins and it focused on educational reforms, on reforms of customs, and on abolishing child marriage and parda. So this ends this chapter, which was social reform and social reform movements in India. Thank you.